Hey everybody, this is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. In the last two videos, we were basically pulling data from our pizza toppings API using different front-end frameworks. So first we did jQuery, then we did Vue. In this next one, I'm going to do React. And if you're familiar with Vue and React, I'm not using sort of the big, giant build setups, okay? So if you use like the Vue CLI or you use like Create React App, there's like these really complicated, really robust setups. I'm using just a basic Vue React setup that you can do without any of that weird build stuff. You can just literally just do in your browser, because that's a good way to get started and getting familiar with these frameworks. That's why I'm not going to do Angular, because Angular 2 and up doesn't really have the ability to just do a basic setup. It's built to kind of have the big giant machine from the CLI from the get-go. So you can watch my Angular videos if you want to learn more about that. Same thing with Svelte. You can't really do it without the build. So if you want to learn more about those, watch my other videos on those topics. But I mean, these videos are going to be geared towards someone who's kind of early on in this particular series in the development. So in that case, Vue and React should be kind of used the sort of the easier way, the sort of I'm just doing it straight out of the browser with script tags way. Okay, so with that, let's go to our React folder. So again, in the previous one we had a Vue and jQuery folder, and I'm going to do the same thing I did the last two times. The goal is to make the same exact thing I've made the last two times, just with React, so you can see the difference in how I get there. The logic's the same. We're pulling the data and then just iterating over it, but slightly different way we do it, and slightly different setup. So create our boilerplate. Now React, there's a little bit of setup. Okay, so we need the React CDN first. React CDN. Okay, here it is. So it's right off the React website. Let me just close this. So we want both of these, because React has two libraries, React and React DOM. And we're going to need both of them. Okay, because React brings in React. React DOM brings in our ability to inject React into HTML. But neither of that's going to work without Babel. So I need Babel, something that translates sort of edgy, newer JavaScript code to modern browser-compliant JavaScript code, because React uses sort of really, cutting-edge syntax. So we need the Babel CDN. Okay. So that's right here. So Babel standalone. I'm just going to copy. Nope, I just want to copy the script tag. So we plop that in there. So you're going to end up having 4 script tags all together, and then the script tag for our app.js. And then what we want to have here is we're going to want to have type equals, I'm pretty sure it's like text Babel. And what this does is that it's when the Babel compiler, since that's going to have been loaded up, sees this, it knows that it needs to translate anything that's in this file while the website runs. So basically this piece is important, because if not, your script, it won't work. Okay, then we're going to start with a div, and just to keep it consistent, it'll also have the ID of app. And we're going to save. That's that. And then that's it. You're set up as far as that. First, we always want to do like a hello world example just to make sure that it's all working. So in React, we always want to create an initial component. Okay, so everything is in bite-sized chunks called components. So I just want to create, we always start off with, we'll just create actually a simple, we'll just do app right off the bat. So const app, and it's got to be capitalized. So const app, that's our initial component, equals, and I'm going to do functional components. So I'm not going to do any class components. If you want to learn more about React, all the types of components, go watch my React playlist. Okay, it's an arrow function. And we always have to pass in props. Don't worry about what props is at the moment. And the idea is that this is going to return what looks like HTML. In React, it's actually referred to as JSX. It's essentially HTML and JavaScript. So we're going to return h1 hello world. Okay, that's what that returns. That's referred to as JSX. It looks like HTML, but it's actually JSX. This realizes because it's a React thing. But I need to inject this little component I need to put into my HTML file. So that's what React DOM is going to do. So we're going to take React DOM. That was the second script tag we put in. And then .render. And with this render function, it's going to render a component. So we have our app component. And any component you make can be kind of used as an HTML tag. So you can see how like that kind of looks like an HTML tag. That's how you would write a component. And then we have to say where we want it. So I'm going to use document dot query selector. And I'm going to say, hey, I want to select the element that has an ID of app. Okay. So what this does, it says that's going to select that div that we put in there and say, hey, wherever that div is, inject this thing in there, which all it is an h1 hello world. So now let's see if it works. Open this up with live server, and it's working. Good. So we got our React set up. Perfect. Now we want to do more than that. So first we want to actually go get the data. Okay, so I'll just leave the return as is for now, but we want to get the data. And we want to do that before when the component loads up. And we need to create somewhere to save the data. And in React, the place you save data is referred to as state. These are special, you could create normal variables, but if you want variables that when the data changes, it updates your DOM, they have to be state. So we're going to say const, and then you have to create a state variable to create that variable that has that sort of reactivity, meaning when the variable changes, the screen changes. You have to do this syntax. So we're going to call the variable pizzas because it represents all our pizzas. And then I'm doing array destructuring because the function we're going to use that gives us back this variable gives us a function too. So generally you always want to call it like set, something like set pizzas. This will be the function we're going to use to change the value of pizzas. And that equals react dot use state. This is referred to as a hook. Okay, and its initial value is just an empty array. Okay, so that's what use state gets passed in the initial value. So what this does, it's going to give us a variable called pizzas. That's just an empty array right now, and it is going to give us a function called set pizzas. Okay, but now we need to go grab the API to put the data in that pizzas variable. So for that, we're going to use another hook called react.useEffect. Now react.useEffect allows us to pass in a function. That function will run the minute the component is loaded on the screen. This is kind of like the created function in the view instance, in the view video. So I pass in the function. Okay, and then for this, I can't make this function async. It creates like an error. It's just the way React works. So I'm going to have to use the .then syntax for this, unless I want to create a separate function, which I could. Actually, I just might do that. So let's create a function called because it's always a good habit to create the separate function so you can use it in other places. Caps lock const get pizzas equals. Say I'm creating a function in the function so I can, because everything in React is contained. So get pizzas, and I want this to be async equals. And then it's literally going to be the same function as before. Const response equals wait fetch. So you've seen me do this 2 times before now. HTTP / localhost localhost 3002 / pizza, and then again we're going to take const pizzas, all pizzas we'll call it, equals await fetch, no, not await response.json, and then we're going to set the state. So we're going to say, hey, that pizzas variable, we're going to set pizzas to be worth all pizzas. Okay, cool. So that's what this function does. And I just want this function to run right away. So we'll run get pizzas right away. Okay. Now I don't want it to happen over and over again. So you can see, like, see right here we have an infinite loop going on. I need to fix that. So to fix that, I got to put an empty array as a second argument here. And see, that stopped the infinite loop that was going on there. If you saw it, it was just one request coming in after another. The reason is the way useEffect works, it runs this function when the component loads, and then again when something changes. But if I don't put this empty array in there, it assumes that every time the component rebuilds, I want to do it again, and it just creates an infinite loop. So since I said, you know, do it when this updates, there's nothing in there, so nothing's going to cause it to change or redo it. So it's a one-time thing. Okay, so we've done that. We've gotten the data. We created a function to get the data. We've invoked that function to get the data when the thing opens. And just to confirm that we got the data, just like before, I'm going to console.log all pizzas so you can see it. So let's go back over here. Control-Shift-I. So we're getting the pizzas. Also, if you download the React DevTools, and Vue has something like this too. Okay, I can go over here to components, and I can see the app component. I can click on it, and I can see that in my state, which is the pizzas variable, all the pizzas are stored in there, so it's working. Okay, not a bad deal. Okay, so we got that. So now we just have to render it to the screen. Okay, so how do we do this? That, again, what shows up on the screen is what we return in the function, which is JSX. But now we're not going to just have one HTML. So when you're doing more than one thing, you got to wrap it in parentheses. And then the easiest thing to do is just, well, we'll just wrap it in UL. Okay, you only can have one parent tag, so we're going to render a UL to the screen. And then that UL, we're going to map a bunch of LIs to it. So we're going to do pizzas. Actually, I'm going to do this. So before it was 2 curly brackets in Vue, it's 1 set of curly brackets in React. So I'm going to do pizzas. So if the pizzas variable actually has value, then do a thing. If not, just put null. Okay, and what I'm going to do, what I'm going to do here, I'm actually going to make it a separate thing. Okay, so let me think about how I want to do this. We'll call this variable render pizzas. Okay, equals, and that's going to be JSX. So again, parentheses. JSX is always parentheses. JSX is essentially like a new data type when you have React on. So then what's going to be here? It's going to be an LI. Or actually, not even. It's going to be pizzas dot map. Pizzas dot map, and then for each pizza, what we're returning is a JSX, which is one LI. Okay, and then we're going to give each LI an ID, or actually a key value, which equals the pizza dot underscore ID, because everything has to have a unique key in React. It's just a thing you have to do. Or it'll give you a warning saying, don't do that. But just like before, an H1 that has the pizza.name, so you guys have seen all this before. And then an H2 or H3 that is the pizza dot toppings dot map, and then each topping we want to return the topping's name, and then we want to turn that into a string, so join with the comma. There we go. And then again the closing curly bracket. Cool. So this variable equals this piece of JSX, or what this array returns. Okay, and then we'll put render pizzas here. So essentially what this says is that render a UL, and inside that UL, if pizzas has value, so it's not an empty array, or actually if pens, let's do that differently, because it's going to have a value because it's an empty array, so that is truthy. So what I want to do is pizzas.length is greater than 0. So if pizzas.length is greater than 0, render the pizzas. If it's empty, don't do anything. Okay, so now let's go back over here and take a look. It is not rendering, so that means I did something wrong. So let's go back to the console. Uncount render pizzas is not defined. Is it not defined? Did I spell it wrong? Render pizzas. Render pizzas. I did define it. Did I make any mistakes in defining it? Where's this parentheses coming from? Okay, that's belongs to that. So why is now define referring to line 16? So let's take a look at line 16. Oh, I didn't say const. That's why I need to declare it. React is very strict about that stuff, and it works. Cool. And see, it looks just like the other ones. So essentially, this is what will happen in React at its most basic level. You can create more components. Okay, just to kind of illustrate something here. So I can create another component. So let's say const test equals, and then it could be really simple. Props return h1 hello world. So just returns that JSX. So literally I just did it in one line. And I can inject that JSX in here. So I can just sit here and do, you know, slash test. Oh, no, slash test. The slash should be at the end. Okay. And see, that came from that component, and you'll see now it says hello world after each one. Okay, so you can create as many components as you want. It's not just all done in this app component. But usually the app component is where you start, and you start building out other components inside there. But for something simple, you might just do it all in the app component just to get familiar with how all this works. So my name is, so again, just to go through this one more time, we are creating this app component. This app component has a function called getPizzas, which goes and gets the data and assigns it to this pizzas variable using this setPizzas function, because we had to create something called state, because that's what updates the screen when the data arrives. We make sure that this function runs when the component starts by using this useEffect thing. And then when this component renders, it returns this JSX. Okay, and we just want to make sure that it doesn't render, because it'll error. If it tries to render the pizzas when there's no pizzas, it's going to try to like render properties that don't exist, and it'll error, which is why I do the ternary operator here, to make sure to only render it if pizzas actually has pizzas in it. And then this render pizzas variable has the JSX that describes how to render the pizzas if the pizzas exist. And then this is injected to our HTML through this function react dom.render that says, hey, take that app component that we created and inject it in this element, which is the div that has the ID of app. Okay, so basically when you're doing React, pretty much none of your code is really in your HTML. So hopefully that makes that clear. My name is Alex Merced from alexmercedcoder.com. Have a great day and enjoy.